Welcome to the Queer Spirit Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Venegoni. Here we have conversations with artists, healers, and activists who enliven the LGBTQ communities and who empower our queer spirits to flourish. My guest today is Kalyela Coach K Josephs. Coach K is a queer spirituality coach whose desire is to help the LGBTQ community experience love and peace with their spirituality and sexuality. She is considered a soul speaker, helping people heal their limiting beliefs so they can live into their purpose. Through firsthand experience, she knows the journey and challenges that a queer person faces. For over 20 years as a gay woman, she struggled with religious trauma, lack of acceptance from family, and internalized homophobia. As she encountered a spiritual awakening, she found peace and inner knowing that being LGBTQ is a divine gift. Her sole purpose is to help you receive the same so that you can live a life of purpose, love, and freedom. Today, Coach K shares their story of struggling with their queer identity while growing up in a conservative Christian community and how they eventually reconciled their faith and identity. They share about their work with clients and how they became a soul speaker. Find Coach K at queeronpurpose.com. Hi, Coach K. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing? Welcome. Glad to be here.
Yeah. So, Coach K, I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit about how you came to become a queer spirituality coach.
How I came to become a queer spirituality coach. And I'll share, you were instrumental in that process too, because when I was thinking like, I want to serve the queer community and spirituality, I came upon all your work, but a little bit in hindsight was just honestly through my own transformation. So, growing up Christian, Catholic, and receiving a message that, I couldn't be gay, lesbian, and love God. And even though at, points of my journey when I just started to live my life out for me more visibly, I just kind of had more of that internalized homophobia or that struggle or challenge. And when I got to a space where I was like, okay, I need to reconcile this. I need to bring healing to this, which was maybe, triggered by a relationship breakup that causes you to kind of look more inside. And on that path, I started to experience a space of peace and really go into that. And this is what I'll call like a Q&A with God, like what's going on? I need to know and wake up every day that I'm okay. And the universe brought that in a sequence of different answers. And once I kind of got to a space where I felt like, I was having peace and it was repeated. It wasn't something that one minute I had peace one night and then I was, in a frantic order the next. When I got to that space, and it was very stable for me and very clear that being queer was okay. That's why I was like, okay, well, I know other folks that feel like this. And I was actually in a coaching program, just trying to advance like my skills on coaching. I'm big on personal development. And they asked you, okay, what's your niche? What's your niche? And I was like, I didn't think of it like niche type thing. But for me, I heard like a thought or something come up inside of me and say, go where you've had the most pain. And for me, that was, I needed to go serve the queer community. I was like, boom, that's it. I want to go serve the LGBTQ community. So that's kind of how I got into the space. And I knew that I wanted to focus on religion and spirituality. And I just love the word queer. I think it's just very much open. So it just became part of language. And I was like, okay, queer spirituality coach. And that's the way that I'm going to serve the community. So just all in a nutshell there.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could expand a little bit more about like what your experience was as a child and that struggle of being Christian and wrestling with your queerness and, when you started to see possibility to still be a queer person and be spiritual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As far as in the wrestling piece, that was more for me around high school age. So I can remember like there was what I would consider like a turning moment where like, I started to like girls. I knew something was going on. Like I was playing basketball and, I was with my teammates and we'll start looking around like when we had those confidentiality moments, we're like, hey, do you like girls? And I was like, yes, I do. You do too. And it was this one moment where I was just kind of having a conversation with my girlfriend at the time. And, that whole, you hang up, I hang up type thing. Late night, you ain't supposed to be on the phone. You're behind, supposed to be in bed. And I guess her mother overheard the call. And then, the following day shared that with the principal. So keep in mind, Christian school, you can't be gay. It's part of the bylaws. And, he pulled me into his office and said, hey, are you gay? And at that moment, I just was like, no, I'm not. Like, just overdoing it. Like, no, I'm not. I don't know what you're talking about. And I had to deny myself. It wasn't until I started to do that work, in my journey of, developing and leading me to being a queer spirituality coach, that I realized that was the first moment that I had to suppress and deny myself, and it was wrestling. So as a teenager, while other teenagers were able to live out and be who they are, I just had to kind of, cover it up. Or even if I did have a girlfriend, I was like, hey, I go get a boyfriend, you go get a boyfriend, let's cover this. So, because I wouldn't get kicked out. My mom didn't know. And that stayed for a very long time. So even in my 20s, when I was out, visibly out, it was just that wrestling still was there because I had a strong connection to my faith, but I didn't know how to live in my faith and reconcile who I was. So even through counseling or faith counseling per se, they say, oh, well, you're not going to go to hell. No sin is greater than the other. I had lived with that for a very long time. Like, okay, well, I'm a sinner, but, God is displeased. But it just really wasn't until I said, you know what? No, I don't want to wait. At that time I had believed, of course, the prescriptive belief of Christian afterlife that, hey, I'm going to die and this is going to happen. I was like, I can't wait to have a conversation with Source or God about this. I have to go into a space of reconciling that now. It was very uncomfortable at moments. I've had moments, mountaintop moments where I'm praying and journaling and what's going on. But yeah, so that's kind of the wrestling part. Remind me of the second piece. I know we talked about I shared the wrestling piece, but what was the second part of that? I just kind of went on a tangent. The wrestling piece.
It's okay. I can't remember. I come up with questions and then they're gone and I let them become what they become. So yeah.
Yes.
Well, one thing I want to go back to, something you said, is you mentioned you went to faith counseling. Is that right?
Well, yes and no, faith counseling, just like my deans and principals at the time, when they became aware of that I was gay, they would just, in essence, try to counsel you to be straight and kind of share with you. I think they had a heart and understood okay, this human, they have these affections and they have these feelings. It's not bad to have them, but this context of that it is a sin, you shouldn't do it. And you're no greater than someone that's, a drunkard or somebody that's cheating. So I was like, when I grew older, I was like, that's not the same thing. This is something innately within me that is not, I choose to drink or not, or I choose to step out of a relationship or not. No, this is something that, just as me being Black, is not something that, it is an isness to it. It's not a thing that I pick up and I leave down. Yeah, so that's what I mean as far as in that part of my life, having the faith counseling. But I did get formalized counseling later to kind of reconcile that piece. Was triggered by my breakup. And the response to what I was going through was, okay, well, maybe your calling is to become straight. Maybe that's why the challenges you're going through, so that you can help other people become queer people to be straight. And for me, that didn't sit well. I was like, I don't think that's exactly what I'm supposed to do. So in essence, I'm glad I followed that advice. There was something in me that says, no, that's not quite right.
So I guess I'm wondering, was there ever a time when you felt like, oh, I can't be spiritual because being spiritual, at least by the religion that I'm a part of, says that I can't be, that, queer people are not, well, I don't know what exactly they would say based on your community, but, it's sinful or it's wrong or it's not the right way. And so therefore I can't be spiritual. So I wondered if there was ever a time when you felt like, well, if I'm going to choose to not change my who I am to be quote unquote straight, then I can't be spiritual? Or did you feel like you could always hold on to your spirituality and be queer?
Yeah. For me, those questions did come up. Like, I guess I can't be spiritual and be gay. So it wasn't a forfeit of the spirituality. It was a forfeit of the gayness, or my queerness was like, okay, well, in order for me to be spiritual, I guess I'm going to have to not be gay, because the choice of the sacrifice of what we're taught, sacrificially, to you got to give yourself to God or the spiritual being, and you have to live your life in accordance to that, and that's kind of another subject for another day, but it was more of I have to give up my queerness in order for me to be spiritual. And when I found myself doing that, like I chose to go a route of being celibate. So I was like, okay, well, I just knew, I was like, okay, well, my thing, I don't truly believe I can be happy being with a man. And it just seems obviously I can't be happy with being with a woman either, because I feel a sense of guilt, or the relationships repetitively weren't going, in the right way. And then you get into this thing where, from my mom or society would say, oh, that happened because you were gay. And I started to internalize it. Oh, my relationship didn't work out because I was gay. So I just thought I had like a no-win type of situation. And the only way for me to bridge the spirituality was being celibate. And although I did have a deep, close relationship, to God, it was still a void there. And it was still that I needed human connection. I still needed to honor my desires. So, going through, in essence, what, I would call like my spiritual awakening, it was like, no, you actually can have both, and, God is actually in your queerness or your transness, whatever that looks like for us. And that's when I started to feel the peace, when I started to really fully accept as myself being a lesbian, and I started to really understand I am the expression of God. That to me took my spirituality to another level of that. The thing that I've been searching for, or we come here to kind of feel, I started to feel the oneness. I started to feel the love of God in the universe and support it in a way. But it took me a way to just kind of say, I can't no longer listen to what I've been taught. It's something more to the story here.
Hey listeners, I just want to jump in here and let you know about a brand new program to help you feel more comfortable and confident in all of your relationships. I wonder if this is you. You have a hard time saying no when others ask for something you don't want to do. Or you worry that others think you're selfish or not good enough. Or maybe you want to be more social, but managing those friendships feels so exhausting that you just want to stay home and watch cat videos. As a queer person myself, I know firsthand that we often put others' needs ahead of our own in order to help us feel safe and secure in our relationships. But the reality is that just leaves you depleted, resentful, and unfulfilled. Well, I'm here to help. On June 11th, I'm launching the pilot of a new program, Needs, Boundaries, and Self-Care. In this 2-day virtual workshop, we'll help your relationships become deeper, stronger, and even more fulfilling without having to do so much emotional labor. Just go to queerhealingjourneys.com/needs for more details and registration. So if you're tired of feeling like you aren't getting what you want out of your relationships, please join us. Head over to queerhealingjourneys.com/needs. You can also find the link in the show notes. Okay, now back to the show. Now, you talk a lot about, in your work, helping people move from religious trauma to spiritual freedom. And I wonder if you can share some of your experiences, if that's okay, of what you would call religious trauma. And the reason I ask, and I think it's really important, is because I know, at least in my work, that a lot of people they hear the word trauma and they think of it as this big, intense, scary, or hurtful thing, because people think about PTSD from like people who are war vets or that kind of thing. But I think it's important for people to understand that trauma can be as something as small as a microaggression, and a collection of microaggressions build over time to create accumulated trauma, which can really affect us. So I wonder if you would be open to sharing a little bit about what you felt like for you was religious trauma through your experiences.
Thanks for that question, Nick. And I love how you just kind of opened it up, broaden it to where that it can be all spectrums. It doesn't have to be this one big, catastrophic thing. For me, the way that I define religious trauma is, a non-loving message around your spirituality that has caused you to have, physical, emotional, mental, spirit, a negative impact in those areas socially. It could show up in every different parts of our life. For me, there were some defining moments, like I said earlier, like that. Now looking back on it, yeah, that was kind of traumatic. You're 14 years old. You're sitting in a, principal's office. You're trying to, as everyone else, teenagers discovering sexuality, and you're being told, no, you cannot be gay, because at that time I would lose my basketball scholarship. My mom didn't know that I was gay. That's a possible, I'm going to call your mother. So, as a kid, you're now having to take the autonomy of making a decision right in that spot, being outed in school. You don't want to be bullied or, any challenges. It affected me with playing basketball because my coach, he found out, and, he tries to, I guess, be the mediator in that and just saying, hey, you can't do this. So that was a traumatic event because it affected the way that I played sports. I just could not be my full self. I wasn't fully, was always nervous. It started to have a little bit of anxiety, wouldn't want to get in close proximity of my girlfriend at that time. So it just kind of started to bring some social anxiety a little bit, like, is someone knowing what's going on here? So that was like an example, just always being nervous of being outed. My mom, she was, from Panama in the Caribbean. So years ago that it was illegal to be LGBTQ. Still today, they don't get full, of course, support. That still needs to be worked on, but she's part of that baby boomer generation and is like, no, absolutely not. So, her discourse of words and saying, I did not bring a child here that's gay, that was traumatic because I felt, in a sense, abandoned, or like, that's where people pleasing. Like, I started to feel like, oh, okay, in order to get my mom's approval, I have to dress this way, I have to act a particular way. Or those words saying that, hey, I didn't bring a child that's like that. That was very hurtful in church. I think that's where majority of us within a community experience it, hearing, you can sense, like, you seem like the pastor or whoever the priest is, like, you feel like they're just talking to you because they talk about, being homosexual is an abomination, or just not feeling supported in your church communities. I mean, I can just remember I was supporting a church. I was like giving a lot of time, and their, I guess, sister church came and it's like, oh, we shouldn't have homosexuals, serving and, doing things in the church. And I just felt like hurt because I had built a relationship with a pastor, but I didn't have any support. So it was just like I felt ostracized, so those are like kind of like examples. I think sometimes it comes out in, outright people in language, people sharing their aversion to it. I think it's also body language. And, if you're in a place and someone looks at you in a different way, you become self-conscious. That could be traumatic. So those are all, I could go on a list, but those are like the key moments where I was like, that was traumatic for me. And just even in a sense, reading the Bible itself, reading sacred texts that may have said it, cringe, like, okay, you don't even want to kind of look at the goodness that it may have because you feel that the whole book is against you. So, yeah, so those are just, to me, deemed as trauma, and it affects your, emotional well-being. It just kind of causes this distant relationship.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I just really wanted to get your perspective because I think it's helpful for people to hear like other people's experiences of what is experience of trauma. And, it doesn't have to be being attacked and gay bash. It can just be a look, or it can be, a word, or, that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if we can, pivot a little bit and talk a little bit about your work, and maybe talk about how you work with people who have experienced religious trauma and how you work with them to move towards spiritual freedom.
Yes, yeah. So, definitely, like I said, grateful to have come to the other side to kind of help people, them get to the other side of this. So, the way that I have structured the program or have it ebb and flow is through like 12 weeks. So, I work best with clients that are saying, hey, I want to have a relationship with my spirituality, but I'm fearful. The way I've also set it up is spiritually inclusive. So, it doesn't matter what your faith background is. If you've had a non-loving message, but you want to reclaim that spirituality, you're invited, which is great because people get to meet folks from all different, religious backgrounds and find out, hey, we have more in common than what we've been told. So that's one aspect of it. And it's just to kind of set up the outcome is for folks to have a healthy and loving relationship with their spirituality. So key pieces that we go through is knowing the voice of God or the spirituality. So very much in society, we've been constructed that, hey, this is what men are supposed to be doing, this is women are supposed to be doing, and we feel ostracized when we're like, I don't feel anything to what the world has prescriptively said what you're supposed to be. So helping them kind of really tap into their own inner voice. And we do that through strategies of mindfulness and meditation and understanding the characteristics. What are the characteristics of God and spirituality? What are the characteristics of, your ego or that inner critic or whatever name you deem that to be? So to externalize that. So we get an understanding of that it's not just, oh, me saying that. It's in essence what I've been taught. So helping people build the knowingness of the voice. We also kind of also work on with like emotional intelligence. So when we're being misgendered or, triggered in any way, how can we recognize and build self-awareness in our own emotions that's going to allow us to respond in a more loving way with ourselves and with other people. Also redefining intimacy. I think that's a big thing within our community is that we've been taught that it's filthy, dirty, or you're not supposed to, and intimacy is not only till sex, but the way that we connect deeply with, our partners. How do you redefine that and actually allow God into that space? Because we've been taught, God is, stay out your bedroom, especially if you're queer, but really bring, that essence, that love, so you can have a deeper connection. And then just kind of overall like confidence building. So we do some good shadow work as what are the things that reduce your confidence? What things were you told? And kind of just really strengthening up your inner voice. The biggest thing I tell folks is that, once you kind of, in essence, complete the program, you'll leave with a stronger inner voice. Because I think that's all we were looking for, a knowing that it's okay to be gay. So I could teach you the stuff, but it's about you doing the inner work, and some part of you'll have a peace or really learning how to ask the universe, hey, am I supposed to be, who am I supposed to be? Who am I here to be? And then you'll start seeing that in art. You and I were talking about music earlier. You'll hear it in a song. So really allowing the universe to talk to you in a different way than what we've been conditioned. To me, that's the big part of when people say, this helped me greatly. Yeah. So love working with folks, and I'm helping them, reclaim that spirituality.
Now, in your bio, you call yourself a soul speaker, and I'm wondering what that title means to you. What does it mean to you to be a soul speaker?
Yes. Now, I don't even know if that's coined out there. It was just what I was like. I truly feel when I'm doing speaking, and coaching, people sometimes don't even have language or words, and they're like, "You spoke to my soul." Like there was something within me that you, for whatever reason, did not know, but your words resonated. So that's what I mean by soul speaker. That I'm always big on anytime before I speak or coach, I'm praying, I'm like, God, take over my speech and help folks. So I feel that the message is there to stir up one's soul and help them heal the parts of them that needs to be healed, or help them enact change in the areas that they need to make change. So it's not more motivational speaking as though it may come off as such or inspirational, but it's really speaking to the essence of who you are. And then going forth, that's when you're really able to make the change. So that's what I consider a soul speaker.
Yeah, no, I like that. I haven't heard anyone else use that term. So, get out there and you can coin it.
Yes.
So I'm wondering, It's, coming back to your own personal story, I imagine that you felt ostracized from your own religious community. And I'm wondering, what you may have found now that feeds your soul and where you find spiritual support for yourself.
Yeah, this is big. Just kind of a little bit of a weird feeling. Like I think I want to say about 4 years ago, I started to notice that I just wasn't really happy in my religious or faith communities. I just felt that I was serving so much in a way, but I wasn't getting my cup refilled. Like there wasn't a place that people that, even if they look like me or identified as me, no one felt safe to just really be in that space. So the way that has evolved for me, spirituality now is, and I think the pandemic has gifted us this, that church is not a building. When we had no choice, like, okay, we're all going to be home, either watching it virtually. For me, that looks like being out in nature, and that is not, I'm not with nature, I'm one with nature. So being able to see God's creation in such a way, like, oh, I hug a tree and I'm like, oh, okay, boom. Like it's being in nature. And that sometimes I'll, maybe even read sacred texts or mindfulness or meditation in that space. I go to, or not go to, but I'm a member of Agape's spiritual center virtually online. And I love that space because it's trans-denominational. It's allowing people from all different walks of life. So that has been fitting for me and where my own path, spiritual path has gone, journaling, listening to music. There's sometimes where I still incorporate sometimes the Christian music, I listen to a Buddhist song or, African spiritual. So it's just giving me an opportunity to really be more inclusive and go into these different cultures, and whatever goodness comes, I just flow with that. So whatever season, I'm like, oh, okay, this is what I'm feeling right now. So that's what my faith looks like, is like a mashup of everything that just kind of helps me grow.
Yeah, I think you're right, especially considering the last couple of years with COVID and not being able to gather in groups. I think a lot of people have had to reconsider and question, like, what does it mean to be religious, and where do I find God, and that kind of thing. And I think that it is important to know that God is not in a building. God is not in church. That's where we go to connect with community and be together around our spiritual practice, but that God can be in a tree that you hug, or in a song that you hear, or, a sunset.
Yeah. Community as well. This has been a big thing. Just being in community, talking to folks. That's what faith looks like.
So, Coach, can you share with us a person, practice, or experience that has supported your queer spirit to flourish?
I would say a person that has been instrumental in my growth. A couple of people, actually, Michael Murdad. I think he's in kind of like the Sedona, Arizona area. Just because I learned a lot from him. Michael Beckwith, of course. I think those are some key folks that helped me really kind of embody these other practices in my life. A practice is just, to me, is meditation and mindfulness. I think for us as queer folks, that is kind of really the gateway, because we have this inner critic that says, don't sit, don't be still. And we're looking for an answer. We're looking for, can I be gay? Can I be who I am? Yes or no? And you have that voice that says, don't ask. So I think the power of putting a question out to the universe and then sitting with it and moving through the fear and moving through those challenges is really where you get your own knowingness and your own belief. So meditation has just been a big thing, and just observation, honestly. Observation is another one, just observing people and just interacting with the goodness and kindness, and equating that is God flowing through this person. God is flowing through that queer and trans person. So there's no way that God is in that person. So that, to me, started to illuminate, yes, God is in all of us. So yeah, I would say meditation and just observation that really helped my practice. Beautiful.
Thank you. So, Coach, where can people find you and learn more about your work and connect with you?
Sure, yes. So I frequent on Instagram, Queer on Purpose on Instagram, and also my website, www.queeronpurpose.com. That's where you can find me.
I like that, because it's like, I'm not queer by accident, I'm queer on purpose.
Yeah, it's intentional.
Exactly.
It's all intentional.
Well, thank you again for being here and sharing about your work and all of your offerings that you're bringing to the queer community.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to share space and have a good conversation.
To find the resources we discussed today, find the show notes at thequeerspirit.com. Make sure you don't miss future episodes by following the show on Apple Podcasts or subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for listening. Until next time, be well.